Hello and welcome and namaste from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Gautam Roy. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. President Draupadi Murmu is set to address the Angolan Parliament. She will also interact with the Indian diaspora in that country. End of the federal government shutdown in sight as the Senate advances a bill after 40 days of stalemate. The bill is to fund the US government through to January 2026 and includes 3 appropriation measures. And COP30 gets underway in Brazil's Belém on Monday with focus on turning climate talk into measurable action. Environment Minister Bhupendra Yadav represents India. India is expanding its partnership with Africa, with President Draupadi Murmu undertaking a 5-day visit to Angola and Botswana, the first ever visit by an Indian head of state to these 2 countries. On the first leg, President Murmu is in Angola, where she will address the Parliament in just a short while from now. President Murmu will also attend an Indian diaspora event. Earlier, the President visited the Memorial Antonio Agostinho Neto in Luanda, Angola. She laid a reed at the memorial of Agostinho Neto, who was the first president of Angola, who had led the popular movement for the liberation of the African nation in the War of Independence for Angola. Neto is also known as a then popular poet and writer in the country and revered by the people of Angola. Thereafter, the President also visited the fortress of St. Michael, which is the National Museum of Military History in Angola, and went around the exhibits there. We'll return to the story as soon as the President addresses the Angolan Parliament or the Assembly, the National Assembly. But for now, we're moving on. And India and Bhutan, in fact, share close and friendly ties as well. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be on a state visit to Bhutan from the 11th to the 12th of November. India's ambassador to Bhutan, Sandeep Arya, has spoken to DD India on the significance of the state visit and the areas in focus.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi is set to embark on an official visit to Bhutan. To tell us about it, we have with us India's ambassador to Bhutan, Ambassador Sandeep Arya. Ambassador, welcome to DD India.
Thank you.
Now, India and Bhutan are the closest neighbors. We understand that Bhutan is also an important pillar of neighborhood first policy for India. How do you see the significance of Prime Minister's visit?
The visit of the Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi, is taking place at a very, very special time. Right now in Bhutan, we have something called Global Peace Prayer Festival, which is going on, which is, I think, also a very unique thing. Bhutanese are calling it an unprecedented event that they are holding. And then we have, of course, bilateral relations and our own various bilateral issues, which will come up for discussion. What is also happening is that we have holy relics of Lord Buddha, which have come here. This country has very strong traditions and belief in Buddhist belief system, the faith, etc. And I think it will really be very good from the perspective of our outreach to the people and participating in many of these festivities.
India and Bhutan also share a very important development partnership. There is a mega hydropower project, P2, as we understand, is going to be inaugurated. How does that take this very special partnership to the next level?
So Bhutan is a country of a moderate size, and for their own economy, I think they are basically hydropower plays a very, very important role. A large part of their GDP production and their exports comprise of hydropower. So This is a 1020 megawatt hydropower project which has been in the making. It's a government to government project. So it has been conceived by the two governments, has been developed also in close cooperation by the two governments. I think it will really mark a very important, very big jump in the hydropower generation. And it's good for the economy of Bhutan. It's good for India in terms of gaining power or electricity.
Ambassador, also if you talk about people-to-people ties, what can you tell us about the capacity building program that India is engaged in, especially for the youth of Bhutan? We learned about the Gyaltsang program. If you can tell us more on that.
So I think our overall profile of development cooperation and economic cooperation between the two countries is very, very broad. We take part in many very wide-ranging activities from education, healthcare, agriculture, and even trade, manufacturing, etc. So I think it's a very broad base on which we are very closely involved. Our bilateral trade itself comprises about 80% of all the foreign trade of Bhutan, so which means we are a very important partner for export and import. And I think coming back to the Gyaltsang program itself, I think which is a very important vision of His Majesty the King of Bhutan. He conceived it a few years ago, and he has conceived it as a program for the purpose of, I think, all the youth in Bhutan to be having, I think, several components are there. One is a little bit of connection with the country.
Okay.
And so there is a brief training of general skills, general kind of awareness, a little bit of basic defense skills also. Then there are specialized skills in different areas, which can be based on the area of interest of the person. It can be in the fields like, civilian, semi-skilled things, and sometimes medicine-related activities, etc. So it's conceived as a one-year course which every 18-year-old in Bhutan should try to undertake.
So thank you very much for speaking with DD India. That's Ambassador Sandeep Arya speaking to us on the broad significance of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's upcoming visit to Bhutan. With camera person Saurabh, Shubhendu Ghosh for DD India in Thimphu.
India's Union Minister for Social Justice and Empowerment, Dr. Virendra Kumar, visited the great Buddha Doordarshan in the Bhutanese capital on Monday. The magnificent statue depicting Shakyamuni Buddha stands majestically in the mountains of Bhutan and was built to commemorate the 60th birth anniversary of the fourth king, Jigme Singye Wangchuk. The great Buddha Doordarshan houses over 100,000 smaller Buddha statues, each crafted from bronze and gilded in gold, symbolizing peace and prosperity. Dr. Virendra Kumar's visit to this iconic monument further highlights the deep-rooted spiritual and cultural bonds between India and Bhutan, reinforcing the shared heritage and friendship between the two nations. And Union Minister for Social Justice and Empowerment also visited Goensho Shamkhang in Thimphu, Bhutan on Monday. He met the elderly people living in the residential retreat. The residential retreat, established by His Majesty the King, serves as a home for elderly individuals who lack family support. Inaugurated in July 2018, Goensho Shamkhang provides not only shelter and care, but also medical assistance and shared spaces for prayer and recreation. Dr. Kumar's visit to the facility reflects India's appreciation of Bhutan's compassionate social initiatives and further strengthens the mutual commitment of both the nations towards inclusive welfare and human dignity. The Union Minister also inquired about the facilities provided to the elderly. And the Minister also met Tshering Tobgay, the Prime Minister of Bhutan, in Thimphu on Monday. During the meeting, both the leaders discussed matters related to social empowerment and the further strengthening of bilateral relations between India and Bhutan. They appreciated the deep-rooted friendship and growing cooperation between the two neighboring countries. Both the sides also expressed optimism about expanding collaboration in various sectors, reaffirming their shared commitment to promoting social welfare, cultural exchange and mutual prosperity. The Minister also then visited the Center for Bhutan and Gross National Happiness Studies in the Bhutanese capital. During his visit, Dr. Kumar interacted with members of various civil society groups, including those representing socially challenged communities. He patiently heard their experiences, concerns and ongoing initiatives aimed at promoting inclusivity and social welfare. Dr. Virendra Kumar also shared his insights and experiences for India's social empowerment initiatives, highlighting the importance of compassion, equality and community participation. The interaction reflected the shared vision of India and Bhutan to strengthen cooperation in the fields of social justice and inclusive development. Now back home, India's Union Minister of Cooperation Amit Shah inaugurated the COP30 2025, an international conference on urban cooperative credit sector in New Delhi on Monday. The theme for the two-day event is Digitalizing Dreams, Empowering Communities. The conference aims to empower communities and strengthen the cooperative foundation of financial inclusion in the country. Addressing the conference, the minister highlighted the immense potential of cooperatives in India.
इंटरनेशनल कोऑपरेटिव अलायंस ने अमूल को विश्व का जो रैंकिंग तय होता है उसमें पहले स्थान पर समग्र विश्व में रखने का काम किया और दूसरा स्थान भी भारत की ही कोऑपरेटिव इफ्को को मिला है। ये बताता है कि हमारे देश में कोऑपरेटिव की संभावना कितने विशाल स्तर पर है।
And still to come in this edition of DD India Live. COP30 gets underway in Brazil. We'll get you the details about India's stand there. And it's the World Science Day for Peace and Development today. The focus is on how science can guide humanity towards a sustainable and harmonious future.
US launch a bombing campaign against Iran. The Philippines vessel suffered structural damage. The saga of child sexual abuse is the United States China's debt trap strategy. Truth is stranger than fiction. But sometimes hard to uncover. Trust us to tell the truth, unadulterated and pure, of every story that matters to you.
Remember to save your country.
You read between the lines, cut the clutter, and connect the dots to get you the full picture. Watch Connecting the Dots at these times with me, only on
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Gautam Roy. The United Nations 30th Conference of Parties COP30 has begun in Belém, Brazil on Monday. It marks a decade since the Paris Climate Pact came into force. A lot has changed since the landmark treaty was adopted, and at the same time, the needle hasn't moved much on several long-standing climate issues. Indigenous leaders from the Andes arrived in Belém to attend the COP30 Climate Summit. Their main goal was demanding a greater say in how their territories are managed as climate change escalates and industries including mining, oil drilling and logging press deeper into forests. In the run-up to COP30, more than 60 countries have submitted revised climate action plans. However, by all accounts, collective ambition will not be enough to keep global warming below the threshold set at Paris. India's Environment Minister Bhupendra Yadav is representing the nation at COP30. India will highlight its clean energy progress, having reached its 50% non-fossil power target ahead of schedule while pushing for practical adaptation indicators. Earlier, reaffirming its commitment to multilateralism and towards preserving and safeguarding the architecture of the Paris Agreement, India called on all nations to ensure that the next decade of climate action is defined not only by targets but by implementation, resilience and shared responsibility based on mutual trust and fairness. During the 12-day-long conference, talks will focus on implementing the Paris Agreement, climate finance and adaptation plans as countries move from promise to action. This is the first COP where the full Paris policy cycle is in effect. Now, every year, the COP summit generates hundreds of headlines on global climate action. This year's has begun on Monday in the Brazilian rainforest city of Belém. But what exactly happens at the annual UN Climate Conference? Here's what you need to know.
The annual conference on climate is known as a COP, which stands for Conference of the Parties that signed the 1992 UN Climate Treaty. The treaty, called the UN Framework on Climate Change Convention or UNFCCC, committed countries to working together to fight climate change, a problem they acknowledged all countries faced and was best tackled together. The treaty also established the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities, meaning the rich countries responsible for most of the planet warming emissions bear a greater responsibility in solving the problem. One of the priorities at COP30 will be to create a roadmap to track global adaptation progress. The roadmap will also need to be sensitive to the fact that social inequalities make some people more vulnerable than others. COP30 is focused on implementation, inclusion, and innovation. During the summit's first week, country negotiators will lay out their priorities and gauge one another's positions. Negotiators are joined by national ministers during the second week to haggle over final decisions, including legal and technical details. For many, this year's 30th Climate Summit marks as a full circle moment. Brazil had hosted the Rio Earth Summit, where the UNFCCC, or the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Treaty, was signed 33 years ago. Central to Brazil's climate finance agenda is the Tropical Forest Forever facility, a performance-based fund aiming to mobilize $4 billion annually to reward countries for conserving tropical forests. This year, the country insisted the event would return to its roots in acknowledging the world's most vulnerable, including indigenous groups, with some joining the talks. Brazil has asked the countries to work on realizing past promises, such as COP28 pledges to phase out fossil fuel use rather than making new ones. COP30 is also the first to acknowledge failure in meeting the past goal of preventing warming above 1.5 degrees Celsius. Most national governments send teams to the talks. Often, countries speak together in groups with similar interests. Some of the most prominent voices include the Alliance of Small Island States, facing an existential threat from rising seas, and the G77 plus bloc of developing countries, including Africa Group and the BASIC Group consisting of Brazil, South Africa, India, and China. On the first day of his second term, US President Trump signed another executive order to withdraw the US from the agreement for a second time, but officially US is set to exit the Paris Treaty in January 2026. Aarti Rana's report for DD India.
Now, the German government is trying to gain some independence from China with regard to resources. And now it has put together a resource fund to help reach that goal. Lars Holter is with Deutsche Welle and is joining me from Berlin to talk about it. Good afternoon to you, Lars. What can you tell us about this fund?
Thanks for having me. Well, certainly that it comes at the right time, not a day too soon. The scarcity of resources here in Germany has been one of the biggest and most discussed problems for the economy as of late. For years, not many people here had even paid that much attention to the problem, didn't really care where certain resources were mined or refined, because we just always got them, and often cheap too, and especially those, of course, that we sourced from China, among them rare earth elements and such. But then we saw these recent trade troubles, mostly between the US and China, and we saw how the power struggle between these two countries had a terrible impact on Germany, or even Europe for that matter. Things got especially dicey recently when China halted exports of rare earth elements, and when many companies in the auto industry, but also engineering and such, realized that they had no alternatives and could eventually be forced to halt production altogether. So the government was very eager now to find a way to become less dependent on one big supplier, and that is what the fund has now been set up to do.
All right, but how big is this fund, Lars, and what is the government planning to do with this money?
Well, here's the thing. At 1 billion euros, the fund is not that great yet, but it's a start. Money from the fund is specifically reserved to support projects where companies either mine for resources in Germany. There's one project right now by a company called Vulcan Energy, and they're working on extracting lithium along the Rhine River. That is one of the biggest German and European waterways. Or the fund will also support mining and extraction efforts in other countries. Currently, there are 2 projects in Canada and Australia. Now, why does the government get involved here? That is simple. Any mining or later on refining efforts will be costly, and getting resources that way will cost companies a lot more than just getting them from China. So the government wants to carry some of the burden and encourage companies to go through with their own projects so as to open up new supplies that won't be dependent on goodwill from Beijing or otherwise be subject to geopolitical shenanigans.
All right, Lars. Well, let's hope that however small this fund may be, it still helps in the situation that Germany is faced with. Thanks for joining us from Berlin. Now, in a breakthrough, the U.S. Senate has advanced a funding bill after weeks of gridlock between the Democrats and the Republicans. This has come as the first step towards ending the 40-day U.S. central or federal government shutdown, the longest in history. In a procedural vote, senators advanced a House-passed bill which will be amended to fund the government till the 30th of January next year and include a package of 3 full-year appropriations bills. If the Senate eventually passes the amended bill, the package still must be approved by the House of Representatives and sent to President Trump for his signature. Under a deal struck with a group of Democrats, Republicans agreed to a vote in December on extending subsidies under the Affordable Care Act. The deal was brokered by 2 New Hampshire Democrats, Senators Maggie Hassan and Jeannie Shaheen, and Angus King, an independent from Maine, the person said. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, the chamber's top Democrat, voted against the measure. Science has always been at the heart of human progress, shaping our understanding, driving innovation and building bridges of peace across nations. Today, as the world marks World Science Day for Peace and Development, the focus is once again on how science can guide humanity towards a sustainable and harmonious future. DD India's Rahul Padhyay brings us this report.
Every year, November 10th is celebrated as World Science Day for Peace and Development, a day dedicated to highlighting how science supports peace, progress and sustainability across the globe. Established by UNESCO in 2001, this day aims to raise public awareness about the vital role science plays in addressing global challenges and improving lives. This year, the World Science Day for Peace and Development 2025 carries the theme Trust, Transformation and Tomorrow, the science we need for 2050. The theme emphasizes the importance of building trust in science, embracing innovation and preparing humanity for the challenges ahead. In 2025, the global celebration is taking place at the 43rd UNESCO General Conference in Samarkand, Uzbekistan, where scientists, educators and policymakers are gathering to discuss how science can shape a sustainable and peaceful world by 2050. Over the years, World Science Day has inspired educational events, exhibitions and discussions across the world, connecting science with society and promoting scientific understanding among people of all ages.
As the world celebrates World Science Day 2025, it's a reminder that science will always show a way forward, and it's up to us to choose it wisely for a better future. With camera person Alok, this is Rahul Upadhyay reporting from New Delhi for DD India.
Sports now. An Indian women's cricket team pacer and World Cup champion Renuka Thakur returned to her hometown Rodu in Himachal Pradesh. The local administration and residents gave her a warm and grand reception. Upon reaching Rodu, Renuka first visited Ma Hateshwari temple to seek blessings. She shared that her journey in cricket was full of challenges, but she never gave up. And that's all we have for this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India's mobile app. It's available on both Android and iOS. Just scan the QR code on screen and download the app right away. And we'll be back with more news and as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live. Up next is my colleague Siddharth with more of the latest.